Have you noticed how darkness gets louder when your soul is tired? Not the kind you see with your eyes, but the kind that settles behind your ribs, that place where fear breathes quietly. In those moments when prayer feels thin and hope feels distant, there's a voice that slips in, soft, convincing, calculated. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And somehow the whisper feels truer than the truth you used to cling to. That's how the enemy works, not by force, but by suggestion. He waits until your guard is low, until your mind is fogged, until you're convinced no one sees the storm you're drowning in. Then he plants a thought that feels like your own. Maybe God is distant. Maybe your suffering is deserved. Maybe you're alone in all of this. And because the lie arrives wrapped in your own tone, you welcome it. You don't even realize you're being hunted, but you are. And the first sign of spiritual warfare is simple, when the darkness starts sounding reasonable. Lie number 1 comes softly, the way shadows move across a room without asking permission. If God really cared, He wouldn't let you walk through this. It never shouts, it seeps. It drips into the ache you already carry, mixing itself with every unanswered prayer and every night you whispered for relief. The enemy knows suffering bends your questions toward despair, so he frames pain as evidence of abandonment. But absence and silence are not the same thing, and pain is not proof of divine neglect. Even the strongest believers have screamed into the dark, wondering if heaven forgot their name. But look closer. Survival itself is a sign that someone has been carrying you when your strength was gone. Grace doesn't always storm the room. Sometimes it simply refuses to leave. The enemy wants you to misinterpret pruning as punishment, waiting as rejection, and weariness as failure. But pruning prepares fruit. Waiting builds depth. And weariness draws you into dependence, not defeat. When your world shakes, it isn't God stepping back, it's everything else losing its false stability. And in that trembling space, truth whispers, "You are held, even here." Lie number 2 arrives dressed like logic. If God truly loved you, He would have given you what you begged for. It uses your unanswered prayers as evidence, your delays as accusations, your disappointments as a courtroom. And because the desire was good, a relationship, a chance, a healing, a door, you assume the withholding means rejection. The enemy loves this. He doesn't tempt you with something absurd. He tempts you with something almost true. He knows your heart aches for clarity, for fairness, for a trace of meaning in what feels painfully random. But love isn't proven by God giving you everything you ask for. It's proven by Him giving you everything you would cling to if you saw what He sees. Sometimes the withheld thing is mercy wearing a disguise. Sometimes the no is protection shaped like loss. Sometimes the delays are shaping you for a life you don't have the strength to carry yet. The enemy wants you to believe God's love is fragile, dependent on outcomes, circumstances, or timing. But real love isn't measured by answers, it's measured by presence. And even now, in the ache, presence is exactly what's holding you. Lie number 3 strikes where you're most human. If your faith were stronger, you wouldn't feel this way. It hits you in the chest when grief returns unexpectedly, when anger flares, when confusion sits heavy in your ribs. The enemy knows if he can shame your emotions, he can silence your honesty. And once honesty dies, intimacy with God weakens. So he tells you that real believers don't tremble, don't break, don't feel overwhelmed. But emotion has never been evidence of weak faith, only evidence of a living heart. Even Jesus wept, groaned, and felt deeply the weight of being human. Faith isn't the absence of emotion, it's choosing God in the middle of it. Tears don't repel him. Shaking hands don't disqualify you. Honest lament is still worship. When you bring your rawest feelings to him, you're not failing, you're trusting. The enemy wants you polishing your mask, terrified of being seen cracking. But God meets you in the cracks long before he meets you in the polished places. Your emotions don't expose a lack of faith, they expose your need for him. And that need is the doorway where grace walks in. Lie number 4 waits until the room is quiet and you're too tired to argue. You're the only one who feels this. No one would understand. It doesn't yell, it isolates. It convinces you that your pain is too strange, too messy, too specific to be shared. So you start shrinking, withdrawing, rehearsing your silence instead of your truth. The enemy knows that loneliness magnifies every wound and distorts every memory. If he can cut you off from others, he can cut you off from strength. But feeling alone isn't the same as being alone. There are people who have walked through storms that rhyme with yours, even if the details differ. And more than that, God has never once left you to navigate the dark without him. He understands what no one else can, sees what no one else notices, and stays when no one else knows how. The enemy wants you hidden, unheard, and unreachable, but healing begins the moment light touches the place you've been convinced must stay silent. You're not the exception. You're not the only one. You are known, fully, and you are held. Truth doesn't always arrive like sunrise. Sometimes it slips in like a warm breath after a long night. But here it is. Every lie the darkness whispered was built on one fear, that you'd discover you were never fighting alone. God hasn't been watching from a distance. He's been walking inside your storm, matching his steps to your trembling ones. Purpose isn't found by escaping the shadows, but by recognizing who stands with you in them. You are not defined by the doubts you carried, the tears you hid, or the nights you almost gave up. You're defined by the one who kept pulling you forward when you had nothing left to offer. Every lie the enemy told had one assignment: separate you from the truth of who you are and whose you are. But truth stands firm. Your story is still open. Your strength is still growing. And grace is still unfolding in places you thought were ruined. The chaos isn't your identity, it's the backdrop where God is shaping your clarity. So when darkness whispers again, ask yourself quietly, which voice has carried me this far?